So Geoff, why don't we kick this off and have you properly introduce yourself to our global audience and tell us about your role at SDVI and about the product that you have called Rally.
Yeah, thank you. Again, my name's Geoff Stedman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for SDVI. And my pleasure really to talk a bit about what SDVI is doing for our customers in the media and entertainment space, particularly as it comes to optimizing the media supply chain. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more too. So as Carin mentioned, SDVI has a platform, a product we call Rally. And Rally is a tool, a platform that our customers use to optimize their media operations while also moving to cloud-based technical infrastructure. So, when we started, we really spent a lot of time with the media operations teams and the technology teams and major media companies, really understand how they were moving content through their organizations. And what we noticed was an incredible amount of duplicate work, multiple sources of information, so no real single source of truth, so wasted resources, underutilized assets, all those kinds of things that many technical infrastructures deal with, especially with on-prem. And we said, if we could take all of this work that media companies have to do on their content, and we can turn that into fungible, elastic jobs using elastic infrastructure. So move that to the cloud, allow the infrastructure to scale up or scale down depending on that workload. We could make those operations far more efficient and far more responsive to what was happening in the market. One of our earliest customers was Discovery Communications, now part of Warner Brothers Discovery. They went all in with the cloud and moving their operations to the cloud, and it made a huge difference in their ability to publish content globally to all of their different outlets. Another key customer that has really gone all in on this cloud-based media supply chain is A&E Global Media, who've moved all of their operations to the cloud. And then other customers of ours include Sky and Paramount and NBC Universal. And so really some of the biggest media companies in the world are relying on the Rally platform to make their operations more efficient.
Geoff?
Great. So thank you, Geoff. Can you explain how SDVI Rally platform integrates into the media supply chain? You mentioned we're going to talk deeper about that. So take us through, what does that mean when you say it integrates into the media supply chain?
Yeah, so the media supply chain could potentially mean different things to different people. At its broadest sense, it could go all the way from script and camera to consumer consumption, the entire media supply chain. In our context, what we're looking at is really that body of work that happens within a media company from the time a finished piece of content comes in from whatever production facility was used to produce that, to the handoff to delivery partners who then post that content and make that content available for consumers to consume. Could be linear television, could be D2C platforms, could be VOD platforms. But all that work in the middle is what I think of a little bit as sort of the more mechanical side of media preparation. So you're creating different versions of content at different resolutions with different codecs. You might be modifying the audio in some way. You might be substituting captions or subtitles. You might be changing languages. You might be checking audio levels. There's just a number of steps that have to get done, many of which can be automated. And you can run through a supply chain to help that media factory really become far more efficient, far more agile, and have a lot more visibility into exactly what's happening as all that content moves through the supply chain. So you're really making the sort of processing of content a more automated, a more machine-driven sort of approach that's using only the resources that it needs when it's doing that work, and then spinning down those resources when there might be spare capacity.
That's great. And I know when we've chatted before the the Rally platform is really optimized. You're mentioning how it gives customers the insight and control over the workflows they have and orchestrating all of the sources and delivery destinations. I'm curious, with agentic coming into the picture and being a major topic right now, how are you seeing agentic workflows complementing and accelerating the Rally platform and how it works?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts there. Agentic is really an evolution of this whole trend around AI. And I think there's a couple of different ways to think about and to look at AI in the supply chain. So, at the very sort of basic level, or at the first stage, is really using AI built on machine learning and deep learning models that can analyze content and extract information that helps media companies do more with that content, mostly monetize it, but also be able to find it. We've got several customers that have done archive migrations to the cloud, and as part of that process, they want to run AI tools on that content for things like image recognition, logo detection, audio transcription, audio translations, and other things. And we see those kind of services as what we call application services. And that's one of the things that Rally is doing as it's managing that supply chain, is it's bringing in applications to work on the content depending on what job is needed at that time. Could be a transcoder, could be an AI engine that is going to analyze that content. And then Rally will collect all of that metadata and keep that metadata associated with the content so that other systems or other people in the process can access that information and find content and be able to catalog content. And so that part of AI has been available with the Rally platform for several years, actually. And it's only getting better as those tools become more and more accurate, and our ability to pull out that metadata that makes content more discoverable. Within Rally, there is this notion of sort of a decision engine that's constantly evaluating what happens, what's the next step that has to be done, what's the result of that step, and based on that result, what's the next thing that needs to be done in the supply chain. And Rally is sort of orchestrating what happens there, and it's managing what applications need to be activated. It's provisioning the technical resources underneath those applications to get that work done. So it's doing all this sort of coordination of the resources and the jobs to get that work done. And so you mentioned agentic, and certainly it's an area we're looking at, is how can agentic AI be brought into that process of evaluating what's happening during the supply chain and making decisions around what happens next and what tool to use. And so there's certainly opportunities, I think, to allow AI not only to enhance the content, but to enhance the flow of content through a Rally managed supply chain.
That's great.
Thanks, Geoff. It's interesting. You touched on so many things, and one of the things you talked about was the word coordination. And I think one of the challenges that we've always seen in media supply chain, it is really a coordination effort around across so many different processes and workflows. And one of the things that you really touched on, which I love, and a lot of our customers share their excitement about your platform, is the insights it provides in the workflows. And Rally has something around resourcing capabilities. So you not only give insight into where content is in the workflow, the packaging and distribution you said, but also the resourcing capabilities to inform your customers on that planning. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the future state is for such planning around that?
Yeah, so resource management is really a key element of what Rally does. Think of, as I sort of mentioned, think of Rally a bit as an orchestration platform for managing all the steps in a workflow, a resource manager for activating applications and provisioning the necessary technical cloud infrastructure to complete that work. And at some level, a media asset manager that's collecting immense amounts of metadata that is generated at every step in the chain. And some of that information is cost information. It could be time information. How long did something take? But one of the benefits of taking advantage of sort of transaction-based cloud infrastructure to do all of this work is we have very granular information about a piece of content, so unit level information on every step of the process. And what that allows us to do is to present information to our customers about exactly what does it cost to process this piece of content as it moves through the supply chain. Exactly how much time does it take? Where are my bottlenecks? Which applications are failing more often than others on particular jobs? And does that content come from a particular source? So customers are able to make much more intelligent decisions because they can see associations between aspects of where content's coming from, where it has to go, and what errors might be happening along the way. Where does a manual operator have to get involved versus why is other content flowing through completely automated? So being able to provide that kind of unit level granular information about every step in the process gives our customers a level of visibility and a level of intelligence that they really have never had before. You know, think about on-prem infrastructure. You've capitalized servers and software licenses, and then you're going to run some content through it. You don't know what that specific piece of content costs. You're just going to average out my CapEx divided by how many assets I'm putting through. With a cloud-based model, you can actually see the very specific time and cost information for every asset that's flowing through the supply chain.
I think that's powerful, especially too it's being able to have things like the platform be very event-driven, and so you're using the resources you need, but then also you can allocate it to really understand how much is this costing you when you're doing sort of an ROI analysis on it. It's a really great point to make in terms of leaning into like the benefits that cloud provide. And yeah. I'm curious too, as we talk about like ROI with intense focus on revenue pressure and such, one of the trends we're seeing is that as the industry's evolved and changed so much in recent years, we're hearing feedback about more and more focus on cost pressure. And one of those things that it's leading to is that studios and networks doing, say, like licensing deals, taking a look at their existing content libraries and maybe launching things like, say, a new OTT service, maybe expanding out into new geographies, new regions. I'm curious, is that similar to what you're seeing on the SDVI side?
Absolutely. In fact, you just sort of described the fundamental value proposition that we bring to media companies, which is they are under immense pressure to produce more content, to get it out to far more endpoints or distribution platforms, and to do so without having any extra resources to do it. So that classic model of, hey, you need to do more and do it with less. And that is a core value that we bring to our customers because, again, of that ability to scale up the technical infrastructure. We allow media operations team to raise their capacity, to increase their productivity, to run more content through the pipeline, through the supply chain, without having to necessarily add more people or more resources. So that ability to give operations teams really the capability to respond to whatever the business is coming up with. And Jason, as you mentioned, the business is always looking for new deals and new opportunities to have more eyeballs get on that content. And we've had many customers who have set up their supply chain for sort of business as usual, and they're running a standard amount of content through that supply chain on an ongoing basis. And then all of a sudden, here comes a big deal. I just signed a licensing deal with one of the top streamers, and now I need to push 5,000 new assets through this supply chain, and they gave me 2 days to do it, or a week to do it, or whatever it is. Well, the beauty of this cloud elasticity that we build into supply chains allows us to spin up those resources to handle that spike in capacity, get that job done, make the operations team look good because they satisfied that deal, hopefully ahead of schedule. But then when that job's done, then spin those resources back down. So customers are not limited by sort of fixed on-prem infrastructure or the licenses that they've acquired or the servers that they have, they're able to scale up and scale down and only pay for that usage that they've run through the system. It's sort of a pay as you go, pay for what you consume, and they're able to get those spikes in work done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're seeing similar challenges on our side when customers are coming to us, and that's why the SDVI platform is so proficient, where it really gives people those insights. I recently read a case study where you had shared some metrics around the cost savings and the ROI numbers, where there's 70% plus reduction in manual touch points and things. Can you share any metrics and KPIs that you can showcase with any customer examples that you're seeing?
Yeah, I can give you a couple of interesting examples. Let me start with an example that is back to that topic I was just talking about, this notion of a big spike in demand and this need to fulfill a big order that came up. And our friends over at A&E Global Media had an opportunity to do a licensing deal with Discovery Plus and to put A&E content on Discovery Plus. And they were given a really tight deadline. And it was a large kind of library opportunity. And so when they looked at it internally to see how would we do this, they were looking at 30 to 60 days of work with an additional 3 to 5 people to get that work done, to move all that content over. Well, they didn't have that kind of time in the schedule. And so the teams at A&E Global Media and Discovery Communications at the time got together. They were both Rally customers. They were able to connect their Rally systems, automate the metadata updating or process that was part of that content transfer, and then initiate that content transfer. And it ended up taking 16 to 18 hours. As opposed to 30 to 60 days. So massive reduction in cost, in time, and a newfound ability to meet the demands that the sales organization had created for them, which is really good for the business. Another sort of more specific, and back to your question about efficiency, Carin, Hearst Networks EMEA recently put in the Rally platform, and they started out with their ingest and QC workflows. And they kind of went through the process of mapping out how their current process worked today, lots of different spreadsheets, lots of email traffic, as content would come in, and they would match it up with an order, and did it meet the right specifications, and someone would check the metadata, and someone would check the video, and someone would check the content, and so they were able to streamline that process when they put in Rally. And that's a key point, because you're not just sort of replicating your current on-prem processes. When you move to the cloud, you have an opportunity to sort of rethink the processes and how do we make the whole thing more efficient. But in that process of setting up their ingest and QC operations and with the Rally platform, they went from what they had estimated as 16 touches for every piece of content in the prior world to only having to have a person interact with the system 4 times. So back to your 70%, a 75% reduction in the number of manual touches as content comes into Hearst Networks for them to then push out to the rest of their supply chains. And so we see that kind of result over and over. Early on, one of our customers had about an 80% reduction in manual touches that they saw. So we see numbers that sound a little impossible, a little crazy, but when you really have the opportunity to transform your supply chain and rethink what you're doing, use applications that maybe you couldn't use before because you didn't have licenses to them or just hadn't had the opportunity to evaluate them, bring them in, tie it all together, automate that chain, you really get immense efficiencies. And as efficiencies multiply, you give the team agility. You give the team the ability to respond faster to whatever comes their way.
That's great. And just sorry to jump in, Jason, but I see we have a couple questions from the audience. So just to put up an audience question, The question, Geoff, if you aren't able to see it, is could Rally be used as part of a post-production workflow? For example, going from a set DIT to edit faster while also automating transcoding a raw media file.
Yeah, I think we tend to sell mostly in the post-production side, so we haven't really put Rally into a production sort of workflow. But in terms of managing the incoming content that might be coming from a set or a production, automating some transcoding of that content, notifications of people that that content is now there and ready for whatever the next step is. And we also do have some tools for you know, because in the supply chain, there are manual steps. There are opportunities or requirements, really, where maybe a piece of content failed an automated QC check, and I need to have an operator evaluate that content. We have an element of Rally we call Rally Access, which will spin up a work order for an operator, notify them that, hey, there's a piece of content that has to be checked, and whether it's Adobe Premiere or other tools, we'll open up that edit environment. There's a panel in that screen for the operator to look at, and all the information is on the timeline. So they can go to exactly the spots they want to make edits or look for corrections that might be needed. You can imagine how much faster an operator can get through content when they only have to check 3 or 4 spots and they're pointed to those spots, instead of having to watch the whole thing and try to find those errors that need to be reviewed.
Great. Geoff, coming from post-production world and lots of high-touch, inefficient processes that drove me a little crazy. It's always great to hear. And also, I especially resonated with me. I was part of a project at one point taking in 2,700 hours of new content all at once. And that was a big reason, like the only way we could handle it is we knew we had to go to the elasticity of the cloud. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to fit through the tiny funnel of our existing
Exactly. If you're building on-prem infrastructure and you have a certain amount of capacity, so you're either going to overbuild it for those times but then it sits unused most of the time, or you're just going to have limits. And you're right. Moving to the cloud really opened up that ability for the pipe to just get bigger or smaller depending on what you're putting through it.
Great. I think hey, Carin, do you want to say anything? I know we're coming close.
No, I just, as we come to the bottom of the hour, I wanted to also say that, SDVI is a global platform. You have global customers. I know the 2 examples you provided were but you have some recent customers in the European market that are, I don't know if you could speak to those. And also a call to action with IBC. We have the International Broadcast Conference coming up in September, and wanted to see if you wanted to speak to anything that will be happening for you there and your presence there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, you're right. We are a global company that sells globally, and we have had some recent success in Europe. That Hearst Networks, I should have said, is Hearst Networks UK.
Okay.
So that was a European customer example, but we have others with ITV and RTL Germany, and so we continue to grow that presence and sort of grow our footprint as more and more customers look to move to the cloud for their supply chain. Yeah, in terms of call to action, a couple of things. Obviously, you can visit our website if you want more information. So that's sdvi.com. But also, as you mentioned, we have the large IBC trade show coming up in September. We will have a booth there, literally right next door to the AWS booth in Hall 5. So we're looking forward to being next to you guys. And yeah, we'll be showing the Rally platform. We'll be showing some really interesting edit workflows. So that question about production, you could see real-time edit in the supply chain as part of the demonstrations that we're showing, as well as our ability to automate the packaging and delivery of content to endpoints. That was a thing we haven't really had a lot of time to talk about, but the supply chain is extending. What started out as sort of factory automation is really now moving to all of the media logistics and delivery elements of the supply chain. And at IBC, we're going to really show some new capabilities of the Rally platform to automate that distribution function that so many of our customers have to manage.
Great. Well, I'll be there, Geoff. So hopefully I can say hello in person. And
Absolutely.
I think with that, I think we're almost at the top of our half hour here. So I want to thank you, Geoff, for joining us. It was a really great conversation. Great to hear what you're seeing and evolve and trends within the industry. And thanks for our commenters as well. Great discussion in the chat.
Carin and Jason, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Geoff. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Geoff.